Incredible act of kindness. Rancher feeds starving Comanche girl. 300 warriors arrive overnight. Jack Tompkins leaned over his dusty fence, squinting into the sun as hooves trampled the dry earth. His hands, calloused and cracked from years of labor, moved mechanically through the herding of cattle. But today, something felt awry. It was a sweltering afternoon, heat waves rippling against the vast Texas plains. As he adjusted his hat, a flicker of movement caught his eye in the brush. It was there he found her, a frail Comanche girl, her frame little more than skin and bones, her once bright eyes dulled by unimaginable suffering. She was a stark contrast to the prideful cattle he cared for, and something struck him deep in his gut. To let her stay was a kindness steeped in his grandfather's teachings, a principle he held close. Yet Jack felt the weight of a moral dilemma bear down on him. What his neighbors would say, his friends, the people who had known him all his life, flooded his mind. Their whispered judgments already formed a noose, tightening around him. He remembered their scornful glares, the talk of outsiders, of dangers lurking in the unfamiliar. Would they see Taya as a child in need of help or a threat to the honor of their small, homogeneous town? The sun hung mercilessly overhead as he led Taya to his home. It felt like a betrayal in the eyes of his community, a step into unknown territory. He could practically hear the murmurs already. "Jack's gone soft," they'd say, "letting that girl in." But with her fragile little hand clutching his, he felt a surge of protectiveness that blotted out the rising tide of apprehension. Yet as the days turned into whispers, he found himself tangled in a web of anxiety. The diner chatter shifted from gossip about the weather to pointed questions about his choices, echoes of suspicion circling him like vultures. His integrity, a beacon for all, felt like a curse that left him isolated. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As concern curdled into anger, Jack's heart raced. He recalled the evenings spent in his grandfather's shadow, listening to tales of courage and honor. But sitting in silence at the diner, surrounded by men he'd have walked through fire for, he questioned if those same values played a role in the cadence of his life. Did loyalty to them outweigh the innate call of compassion? By sheltering Taya, had he jeopardized everything he held dear? Then, one night, shadows loomed over the horizon. 300 warriors arrived, Taya's family, a sight that stoked deep-seated fear among the townsfolk. Jack's breath hitched as he discovered this gathering wasn't fueled by rage, but spoke of unity against the vilification of their plight. He sensed the tension crackling in the air, the long-standing beliefs of the townsfolk pivoting on the edge of a knife. They were coming, and he stood there as a chasm widened, caught in the grip of uncertainty. Jack's resolve quaked, battling shadows of memories and fears of rejection. The question slammed through him with the weight of a hammer. Would he stand alone in this storm of prejudice, or would he let the voices of judgment swallow him whole? The climax of conflict lay just beyond his grasp, a reckoning begging to be ignited. Would he risk everything for what felt right, or would he cave to what had always been? As the night deepened, the crowd's tension thickened like matted fur. Jack's eyes locked on Taya's face, her strength an unwavering anchor in the tide of chaos around him. The choices roiled within him, each heavy with repercussions still unknown. The first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, casting a new light on the swirling chaos of emotions within Jack. The chill of the early morning pricked at his skin, but his insides were ablaze with a mix of fear and determination. Taya, stirring beside him, seemed to sense the turmoil. Her small hand found his, anchoring him in the present. He glanced down at her, her weary eyes reflecting a silent plea for safety, her trust becoming a catalyst for his resolve. In that moment, Jack recognized that he wasn't merely protecting Taya. He was confronting his own deep-seated instabilities regarding identity and ethics. His life had been woven tightly into the fabric of the town, but here he stood at a precipice, where doing what was right diverged sharply from the familiar path. The whispers from the diner weren't just about her. They were about him, testing the essence of who he was. Facing the warriors gathered outside transformed his panic into a palpable energy. These men and women were not marauders. They were guardians of Taya's spirit, representing a history intertwined with the land he loved. Questions slammed through his mind with unyielding force. How could he honor both his past and the unfolding truth before him? If he stepped outside, would he be forced to choose sides, to declare allegiances as if he were in a battle? "Stay close," he whispered to Taya, who nodded, clutching his hand tighter. He couldn't let fear dictate his actions. Drawing strength from her presence, he took a steadying breath and made his way out to meet the gathering. Dust swirled around his boots as he stepped into the fray, every footfall resonating with the weight of his choices. The murmurs grew louder as he got closer, a swell of conflicting emotions bubbling beneath the surface. He spotted familiar faces among the crowd, friends, neighbors, reactions ranging from scorn to bewilderment. But Jack pushed through, feeling an inexplicable urge to speak, to share the truth he had found in protecting Taya. "I see them," he began, his voice trembling at first, but strengthening with certainty. "They are not just warriors. They are our history, our past. Taya is not a threat. She's a reminder of compassion, a lesson I've almost forgotten." Jack locked eyes with several townsfolk, searching for understanding, for a connection that felt vital. But he also felt the sting of disapproval, a wall that had been meticulously built by intolerance. Energy crackled between him and the gathering, his voice rising above the din. "I ask you to look beyond what you fear and see what is right. We can no longer allow fear to dictate our actions." Listening intently, Taya squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his courage, though Jack could see the uncertainty flicker across her face. The harmony of his words was met with looks of disbelief, but Jack sensed just beneath the surface, where frustration festered, a flicker of hope. Would they choose to rekindle their humanity, or would ignorance prevail? With every breath he took, Jack felt the tension solidify into something more, a collective questioning of their deeply ingrained beliefs. The moment had come to confront, to acknowledge the power each individual held over the tide of change. Still, as he spoke, doubt gnawed at the edges of his bravado. Was standing up enough to shift the hearts of those who had always turned away? The stakes felt unyielding, thickening the air like fog. He focused on Taya, her wide eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope, anchoring him even amid the labyrinth of confrontation. Jack knew the forthcoming decisions would carve the path of their futures. But before he could delve deeper into that potential, a voice shouted from the crowd, "You've changed, Jack! Why should we listen to you?" And just like that, Jack faced not only the warriors, but also the street that had outlined his life, testing him at every turn. The time had come to face the ghosts of expectation, to turn the tide before it became irreversible. Jack's heart drummed in his chest at the challenge, the voice from the crowd echoing the seeds of doubt already planted in his mind. "Why should we listen to you?" It hit harder than he expected, a personal confrontation drawing a line in the sand between who he had been and who he was becoming. He had always walked the straight path, the path of conformity, often submerging his discomfort for the sake of belonging. Now that loyalty was being called into question. He blinked, quickly scanning the faces that surrounded him, familiar yet distorted by emotion, anger, fear, confusion. They saw him standing beside Taya, a girl who represented a shift, a challenge to their way of life, and the question hung thickly in the air. Could he stand against the tide? Determination surged anew as Jack pushed back against the rising tempest within. "Because I've learned," he stated firmly, voice breaking through the cacophony. "I've learned that true strength doesn't come from fear, it comes from compassion. We can't continue to feed the monsters of hatred." The world surrounding him transformed in this moment. The air thickened with tumult, but also shimmered with possibility. Against the backdrop of rugged mountains, he felt a jolt of inspiration, as if the very land was urging him forward. Too long we've allowed our history to define us, stories fed by fear and division. His words gained momentum, energy infused in every syllable. "I've had fear in my heart too. I've judged without understanding. But stepping into this moment with Taya, I've come to realize we need authenticity over acceptance. I see so much more than what's been laid out in front of us." Whether or not they accepted his words remained uncertain, and underneath the pulsing courage lay the specter of vulnerability. Jack felt his knees threaten to bend. The weight of not just Taya's safety, but the town's perception bore down heavily. Yet there was something liberating in the act of speaking his truth, a revelation that tasted like freedom. "Show me your hearts," he challenged, stepping further into the fray, his eyes locking on to those of an old friend, the one who had always seemed to stand by him, grounded and steady. "What do you see when you look at her? What do you want for our children, for your children?" A ripple of murmur floated through the crowd, doubt mingling with the stirring of curiosity. For the first time in a long while, some faces softened. Jack sensed a shift, perhaps even a collective questioning of long-held beliefs. But as the tension in the air thickened, so did the fear brimmed behind the lines that were being drawn. He could feel it. The tension had transformed once again, mutating into something tangible, almost infectious, and Jack was at the center of it. Sweat dripped down the back of his neck, and he was keenly aware of Taya's grasp, her trust fueling him like a burning coal. "The past haunts us all," he breathed, locking serious eyes with the naysayer who had questioned him. "We can't let it dictate our futures." Would they listen? Could his words resonate against the shield of ignorance? Was he prepared for the consequences, whatever they may be? The risk of rejection sat stark within him, not just for Taya, but for himself. A challenge to evolve beyond the boy who had carved his identity based on the town's drums. Before he could process the implications of his plea, a new voice, rougher, deeper, rose behind him. "Shut your mouth, Jack. What would a coward know about standing up?" The crowd turned restless, and Jack felt the betrayal implicit in the derision. They weren't merely reacting to Taya's presence. They were contesting the very foundations of their community, and he was positioned precariously in the eye of this storm. Would he dare navigate this path of escalating conflict, where every word could either ignite or extinguish their flickering humanity? Jack inhaled deeply, heart pounding as he prepared for the looming confrontation, both with them and the remnants of himself he was grappling with. Whatever path lay ahead started now. The deeper roar of discontent echoed around him, a tide he couldn't ignore. Jack felt a fusion of fear and urgency. Each pulse of his heart pronounced the growing chasm between his childhood self, the boy who had worn blinders to stay accepted, and the man he wanted to become, unflinchingly honest. The jeers transformed into a direct challenge. "Who are you, Jack?" The question gnawed at him. "Is it cowardice to protect those who need it?" he shot back, voice steady, but every word cost him. He searched the faces in the crowd, hunting for solidarity, praying that his resolve would be enough to bridge the fracture. "You think she deserves your pity?" came another voice, this one pushing through layers of indignation. "What's she ever done for us? Nothing but bring chaos." The refrain repeated in his mind, chaos. Jack understood now that what the town feared wasn't Taya, but the disruption of their carefully curated peace. "Look," he began, forcing stillness into his shaky breath. "This isn't just about her. It's about us, what we stand to lose by turning our backs on compassion." As Jack spoke, a flicker of realization ignited in him. These confrontations could be his metamorphosis. Could he reshape the narrative, not just for Taya, but for his own soul? Each heartbeat urging him forward nudged away the boy who had conformed. In its place stood a man willing to take the slings and arrows. The crowd seemed to pulse with fluctuating energy. Some faces still hardened, but others starting to waver, caught in the curiosity of his unyielding sincerity. But just as some seemed to soften, the opposition amplified. A youth, one he'd once laughed with over pizzas in the old diner, emerged as the ringleader against him. "Save your breath," he yelled. "You're just scared of what that girl represents. You've turned your back on us." Those words hurt like knives. Guilt slashed at him, a reminder of old loyalties. Was he truly turning his back? Pain swelled in his chest as he battled self-doubt. But that same pain held a different edge now. It urged him to wrestle with the truth within. "Maybe I'm scared," Jack shouted back, his voice echoing through the tumult. "Scared of staying silent while we sink further into hate? Scared of living in a world where we let fear strangle our humanity?" His admission hung in the air, raw and unfiltered, disarming. Jack could hear the collective intake of breath as new tension manifested, a tension spring-loaded with possibility. This was what he had done. With every day of conformity behind him, he had built a cauldron of frustration, and here it was boiling over. "Do we really want our children growing up surrounded by bitterness?" Jack pressed, his own heart beating louder than the jeers. "What will they think when they look back on us? The fight won't make them stronger. It will just make us all weaker." Slowly, he noticed heads nodding, some people exchanging doubtful glances. Impact drifted in his direction, like wisps of smoke. Perhaps this was where he would find the others, the ones still willing to listen, the ones who shared the unfulfilled ache for something deeper than a mere existence. But the shouts continued, and Jack realized the battle wasn't over. The naysayer's face twisted. "You think some words will change anything? That we'll forget the past?" In that moment, Jack saw a flicker of apprehension behind the aggression, a glimpse of their shared vulnerabilities. They were scared too, of change, of the unknown, and so was he. "I've learned that facing the past can create a future worth fighting for," he declared, the purity of his stance grounding him against the tempest. "I'm done waiting for someone else to lead the way." The crowd shifted, a phenomenon of confusion swirled with intrigue. With resolve illuminating his heart, Jack held his ground once more, determined to engage the naysayers, questioning if he could glean understanding through a shared reckoning. The silence that followed his assertion teetered uneasily between possibility and rejection. "Bravery is to love despite the risk," he whispered, almost to himself, yet loud enough for those who listened. A fragile connection was being fostered in that bare moment, dancing at the edge of acceptance. But deep within, an unsettling uncertainty brewed. Would his heart be enough to forge change? Then the rough voice broke through again, sharper and more menacing. "You think you can make us forget? It's time you learned the real cost of standing alone, Jack." As the crowd's tension escalated, Jack felt the gravity of his transformation weigh heavily upon him. Would he stand firm in the face of impending conflict, ready to bear the consequences of every choice made? The next chapter of his evolution loomed before him, rife with both peril and promise. Jack's heart raced as he faced the escalating tension. The taunting voice had conjured a storm of memories, days spent desiring acceptance, nights grappling with self-doubt. He could feel the intensity of scrutiny, each glare igniting an internal battle. Did he really have the courage to stand alone against not just the crowd, but the expectations of his own past? "Enough!" he boomed, surprising himself with the volume, commanding the attention of the gathering. Yet within the depth of his challenge lay an unspoken plea for understanding, a bridge he was desperate to construct. The crowd wavered. A mixture of anger and hesitation rippled across faces. However, Jack knew he had to solidify this fragile connection. "Meet with me, talk with me, I want to understand you," he implored, unwavering yet humble. In that tense standoff, Jack felt an electric surge of purpose. Raising the stakes, he positioned himself as a catalyst for deeper conversation. The very act of approaching the unknown could redefine not only his destiny, but the entire fabric of their shared history. But what awaited him in those conversations beyond this moment of daring? Could dialogue redefine their future, or would the past continue to suffocate any semblance of hope? Jack took a deep breath, the air rich with tension and the promise of transformation. The ringleader's unyielding gaze bore into him, creating an unbreakable bond of defiance that both terrified and motivated him. He had ventured into uncharted territory, and now the real test awaited. Facing the crowd, he felt the fractal complexity of emotions swirling within him. Anxiety clashed with burgeoning confidence. Each heartbeat synced with the knowledge that he was becoming someone he had only envisioned, an agent of change gripping the opportunity before him. "Tomorrow," he began, his tone steadier this time, "I'll gather thoughts from anyone willing to share. Let's open up. Whether the memories are joyous or painful, they matter just the same." The words resonated, and a flicker of acceptance sparked in the eyes of those nearby. In this moment, Jack sensed the potential with each listener, as though they were dormant seeds waiting for the right conditions to grow. Awareness washed over him. This was no longer about him solely fighting for their recognition, but rather enacting a mutual, profound discovery. However, the ringleader stepped forward again, challenging Jack's optimism. And what if they don't want to share? Or worse, what if they openly push back? You throw a stone, and it might break the glass you wish to bridge with. Jack's breath hitched, the vivid imagery taking root in his mind. For a fleeting instant, doubt crept in, threatening to erode his resolve. He was acutely aware of the sensitivity embedded within these interactions. Every thought shared would tear open old wounds, while every silence could equally scar the new hope blossoming amongst them. Yet he pressed on. It starts with dialogue. We can't be afraid of the truth, no matter how jagged and uncomfortable it might be. In honesty, there lies a chance for healing. As he spoke, he noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. People began to murmur to one another, their postures relaxing, even slightly. The vulnerability inherent in Jack's declaration acted as a light casting aside shadows of doubt.
Just perhaps he could inspire action in a place fortified by years of resentment. Jack turned back to the ringleader, a soft intensity growing behind his words. I know I can't hold everyone's hand. That journey is deeply personal for each individual.
But the choice to engage in this dialogue, I can offer that. The crowd remained restless, caught in a crossfire of their silent histories and burgeoning hopes. Yet Jack felt the current of change coursing through him. Those who wish to abstain from this dialogue owe it to themselves to confront their fears. No one can hold power over you if you refuse to be a prisoner of circumstance, and I promise I will stand beside you. As he finished speaking, a ripple of recognition flitted through the members of the group. Fragments of resolve and understanding brightened their expressions. A new determination sprouted, waiting to be nurtured. Jack allowed himself a cautious smile, buoyed by the flurries of emotion swirling around him. He had effectively planted the seeds, but he sensed the hard work was just beginning. The ringleader met his gaze, a trace of respect cutting through the earlier hostility. You're either going to inspire hope or invite anger. Perhaps you're more reckless than I imagined. Jack felt a surge of adrenaline alongside a shadow of trepidation. Recklessness could bide both peril and opportunity, and he was inching closer to an edge that could redefine everything. Perhaps, he replied, feeling the tremor of uncertainty tightening its grasp on him. I may just uncover something extraordinary, with your help. But could he withstand the tidal wave of emotions that would arise when facing the stories laid bare? The truth could spring revelations Jack never saw coming, but was he prepared for the fallout that would inevitably follow? As dawn broke, Jack awoke to the cacophony of birds outside his window, their relentless chatter a reminder of the day's impending confrontation. He had spent restless hours thinking about the possibilities, wondering how the dialogue he envisioned would unfold. His optimism felt like a flickering flame, fragile yet vital against the chill of uncertainty. The sun rimmed the horizon, and Jack could feel its warmth on his face, as if urging him to rise and take action. Today was crucial, but a new layer of anxiety clung to him like a second skin. He dressed quickly, replaying his strategy in his mind. Could he truly facilitate this discussion? Would his own fear of exposure overshadow the vulnerability he wanted from others? Jack stepped outside, taking a moment to breathe in the fresh morning air. It was crisp, invigorating, and held the weight of endless possibilities. Future conversations danced in his mind, echoing the permutations of openness and fear. Even in this tranquil moment, doubt whispered insidious thoughts. What if they refused to engage? What if they laughed at him? He shook his head, trying to rid himself of those thoughts. The truth was, he felt unmoored, a fine line between determination and despair. He needed to draw strength from somewhere, and it began with the memory of the faces he had seen yesterday. Eyes filled with skepticism, yet flickers of hope glimmered beneath their guarded exteriors. He pulled out a small notebook, the covers worn from use, and scribbled a few notes. Start small, encourage honesty, normalize vulnerability. Each word brought a sense of grounding, yet he feared how quickly that grounding could dissolve. Arriving at the designated place, the unease rippled through him as he surveyed the empty space. Silence hung heavily. Tension simmered just beneath the surface. Could he stir this silence into a dialogue? He paced, rehearsing his opening lines, mentally preparing for skepticism and pushback. Minutes later, figures appeared, reluctant but curious, shadows weaving cautiously toward him. Jack's heart raced as he greeted them. Their eyes carried stories that brushed against the edges of his courage, but he found his voice rising above the noise. "Thank you for being here," he started, feeling a tremor of sincerity. "We all have something to say, and your experiences matter. This is a safe space." His voice wavered, the confidence he had built almost faltering. Yet he pressed on. "Let's start with a simple question. What brings you here today?" Silence blanketed the group. Jack's stomach twisted. He feared the moment might collapse under the weight of his expectations. But then a voice broke through, hesitant yet determined. "I'm tired of feeling alone." The admission landed heavily, an act of vulnerability that sowed a ripple of courage among others. Someone else spoke up. "I feel like my past is a chainsaw, just cutting through everything I try to build." Jack's heart thudded, exhilaration coursing through him. One by one, stories unfurled like petals coaxed by sunlight. As he listened, empathy washed over him. Their truths reignited something deep within, an understanding of struggle that crystallized his own fears and aspirations. But as the stories poured forth, Jack soon recognized an uncomfortable reality. His role demanded more than just listening. With every revelation came a weighty responsibility to help them navigate the shadowy terrains of their emotions. Could he be the vessel that would guide them through the storms of their histories? The afternoon drew on, and as the crowd began to ebb, Jack felt a shift within himself. His initial anxieties were replaced by a growing resolve. Yet a question loomed larger than before. Would he be able to face the shadows of his own past as he ventured deeper into these discussions? Fueled by this new understanding, Jack braced for the challenges ahead, realizing that his journey intertwined with theirs in ways he hadn't anticipated. The time had come to confront his own ghosts. But would he find the strength to do so amid the turmoil of others' revelations? With the sun now high in the sky, illuminating the remnants of the exchanges from earlier, Jack found himself alone in the empty space, the air still vibrating with the echoes of shared vulnerability. The fading faces of those who had opened up haunted him. It was as if their pain had attached itself to his soul, intertwining with his own unresolved past. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, but now it bore a different significance. He needed to explore the depths of his fears and past, the very things he had avoided for so long. Driven by a blend of determination and dread, he left the gathering spot and wandered to a nearby park, seeking refuge among the trees, their branches swaying gently, almost whispering secrets of strength. Jack leaned against a rough-barked trunk, clutching the notebook that had sparked the day. A tight knot of emotions brewed within him. "Why am I so afraid?" he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Memories of past failures surged forth, a series of moments where he caved in the face of discomfort, where he chose silence over the articulation of his pain. Those experiences felt like chains restricting him from taking the next step. Sitting down, he opened the worn pages, flipping through notes he had hastily written during quieter moments in his life. Each point simple yet profound, they served as a reminder of his potential to inspire change. "Growing requires discomfort," he muttered, a phrase that seemed foolishly optimistic at the moment. As turmoils swirled within him, he closed his eyes and envisioned the faces of those who had shared their burdens earlier. They had taken the first steps, couldn't he? His own admission had remained unspoken. What was he willing to confront? Everything within him screamed for acknowledgement. The past waited like a lurking shadow, ever present and steadfast. Forcing himself to breathe deeply, Jack wrote a new line, "Face your past." Scrawling this mantra helped him focus, siphoning off the swirling thoughts racing against one another in his mind. But hearing the voices of the group resonated, challenging him further. They had laid bare their truths. What would he say if he followed their lead? "I'm terrified of never being good enough," he scribbled, feeling the words release a ghost trapped inside him. The act felt strangely liberating, as if shedding a layer of himself he never realized was suffocating him. Rising from the ground, a spark of insight ignited in his chest. He had spent too long evaluating others while neglecting to confront his own demons. This could change the dynamic of his conversations, the duality between facilitator and participant blurred.
He could guide them through their struggles while holding his own struggle in the light. Just as they had taken the plunge, he too could step into the open air of honesty. Emboldened by this recognition, he made his way back to the gathering space, determination pooling thickly in his veins. Each step felt like a stride toward a different kind of engagement, one where he could share, confess, and ultimately heal. But the uncertainty still lingered, gnawing at the edges of his newfound clarity. Would they accept him on this journey, or would his vulnerability prompt judgments? As he arrived, the gathering was in disarray. People were half assembled, their anxieties floating about them like fog. Jack felt an electric thrill course through him. The time had come to merge his path with theirs, to reshape the framework of their dialogue. His past would become part of their present. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, a single question boiling up within him. Are we ready to be real with each other? This simple query promised to dismantle walls and reforge connections. Would this exchange prompt more truths to break free, and in doing so, unravel deeper connections with both himself and those around him? That possibility hung in the air, tinged with excitement and tension, as Jack prepared to navigate the unveiling of shared experiences, ready to embrace whatever would emerge. The atmosphere shifted as the group turned to Jack, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. His heart raced. The moment demanded authenticity, but threatened exposure. They were looking to him for guidance, a lifeline in their shared uncertainty. What had he initiated with that question? Jack's mind raced as he collected his thoughts. The gathered faces, familiar yet fragile, were hungry for connection, just as he was. He realized he hadn't merely stepped back into the gathering as a facilitator. He intended to absorb their struggles and unravel his own in the process. Encouragement battled with anxiety, and for a split second he almost retreated into silence again. No, he thought. I need to tell you all something, he began, his voice steady despite the trembling of his hands. I've always believed that vulnerability is a weakness, but it's not. He could feel the weight of their attention, all their eyes locked onto him, as disparate heartbeats created an ever-thickening tension in the air. Jack allowed a breath, feeling the tumult inside countering the calm he tried to project. I find myself constantly afraid of never being good enough. There it was, the revelation that felt both daunting and liberating. The words seemed to hang in the air as he embraced the silence that followed. Gradually, murmurs of empathy rose, creating a blanket of understanding as members of the group began to share their own fears. Jack found solace in their openness, each confession tearing down barriers and stitching together an invisible thread of solidarity. They spoke of inadequacies, unachieved dreams, and the weight of expectations, a collective unburdening that spanned from one individual to the next. As each person revealed their truths, Jack's initial hesitations began to dissolve, replaced by a surprising sense of camaraderie. The realization settled within him. In connecting through vulnerability, they were cultivating strength. He might have originally felt like a lone combatant against his past, but here, shoulder to shoulder with others, they were collective warriors facing an undefined enemy. While listening, Jack's thoughts wandered to how this new perspective might affect him moving forward as they delved deeper into their discussions. He began to formulate ways to carry this momentum into future interactions. He could encourage everyone to feel empowered through their vulnerabilities rather than ashamed of them. Could this interaction usher in a different approach to his role, one where he modeled strength through his own honest disclosures? Hours passed, the gathered group now lost in layers of conversation and mutual respect. Jack sensed an unspoken charge among them, a unity forged not merely in shared pain, but also in the resolve to transcend it. As he watched others speak candidly, their spirits appeared reignited. Here, instead of mere open forums, he envisioned workshops,
structured, future dialogues, blending personal insights with collective healing processes. But suddenly, a thought pricked at his consciousness. What about the deeper scars lingering beneath the surface? His past was one of struggle, often veiled in shame. What would it mean to confront even darker recollections? The thrill of possibility battled with trepidation. "Can I suggest something to everyone?" Jack said, inclination urging him towards yet another dive into vulnerability. The group quieted once more, awaiting his next move with bated breath. "I think we should take a moment to write down what scares us the most, what we've buried deep, and then we can decide together what to do with it moving forward." A ripple of unease danced among the group, yet curiosity lingered in the air, twinned with exhilaration. Perhaps they were ready to embrace everything, not shying away from their shadows. Jack could feel excitement bubbling within him, yet the familiar grip of fear tightened again. What if they uncovered truths even darker than anticipated? Could he withstand the currents of those revelations? Jack's gaze swept across the gathered faces once more, each one marked with anticipation and trepidation. He had opened a door to something profound, something that could either elevate them or plunge them into deeper chaos. What lay beyond that threshold remained unresolved, shrouded in the tension of his own uncharted emotions. As they prepared to write, Jack realized that with each stroke of the pen, they would also write their own destinies, but not without confronting the very fears that had held them captive for so long. The question lingered in his mind, echoing with the charge of possibility. Were they ready to face their true selves? The sun hung high in the Texas sky, casting long shadows as Jack found himself in the heart of a transformed gathering. The air pulsed with anticipation as he prepared to guide the group through the exercise of vulnerability he proposed. Each face reflected a spectrum of emotions. Curiosity danced with trepidation in their eyes. Today could mark a turning point for all of them, but uncertainty loomed just as heavily. As he stood before them, pen at the ready, Jack felt a pulse of urgency ignite within him. "Are we truly prepared to plunge into the depths of our fears?" he asked, his voice resonating with a newfound authority that surprised even him. It was a call to authenticity, a testament to his own journey from isolation to collective strength. They nodded, albeit cautiously, and Jack could feel the tide of possibility rising. He handed out small slips of paper, the crispness of each sheet laden with potential. Their shared act of writing was an unspoken commitment, a vow to explore the darkness that often chained them to silence. As the room fell into focused quiet, Jack's heart raced with anticipation and fear alike. The weight of their truths would soon intertwine with his own. Minutes passed, and the rustle of pens filled the space. Jack glanced around, the energy shifting from tension to a palpable catharsis. People's expressions softened as they surrendered to their vulnerabilities. Within the silence, Jack could almost hear the echoes of their pasts, lives intersecting in a powerful tapestry woven with threads of pain and hope. Once everyone had completed their writings, Jack felt the enormity of the moment. He took a deep breath, deeply aware of what lay ahead. Now we must choose how to move forward with these fears, individually and collectively. Will we allow them to hinder us, or will we confront and transform them? Hands hesitantly raised, some folks eager, while others trembled with the weight of their confessions. Jack felt a rush, a sense of camaraderie surging through him. They were no longer isolated individuals. They were a unit bound by shared truths, ready to take the next step together. One by one, they began to speak, allowing their fears to spill into the open. A woman named Clara shared how she feared being seen as weak. A young man spoke of parental expectations and the suffocating weight of unfulfilled potential. With each revelation, the space around them crackled with newfound energy, fear transmuting into connection. It was not long until Jack too felt the tide of courage swell within him.
He stepped forward, meeting them with fierce sincerity. "I carry my own burdens," he admitted, his voice steady and clear. "I fear I will never measure up, that I'll remain forever a shadow of my potential. But we cannot grow in the comfort of silence, nor do we have to bear these struggles alone." His admission elicited a shift, a collective sigh of understanding washing over the group. The honesty broke through decades of isolation. Silence that once confined them now teemed with potential, a declaration of intent to heal together.
Let's consider what comes next. We must redefine our sense of belonging, noticed not through conformity, but through acceptance of who we truly are, Jack continued, invigorated by the solidarity they had forged. How can we refocus this energy into actionable steps towards change? Jack's sentiment echoed around the room. Ideas sparked like dry tinder catching flame. People shared notions of community initiatives aimed at inclusivity, discussions that could help dismantle misguided fear by building bridges with open dialogue. There was a palpable determination, the sense that they were no longer fenced in by their pasts but expanding into a brighter, collective future. As plans formed, Jack felt a surge of elation. He understood something fundamental about his own evolution. He had evolved from a solitary warrior into a collaborator, an architect of possibility. The external validation that had once weighted him down now transformed into recognition of shared power. In the days that followed, word of their meetings spread through the town. Strangers began reaching out. The whispers that once spoke of judgment now shared stories of connection. A unified community rising, reflecting Jack's own journey to acceptance. Weeks later, standing at the forefront of a newly formed initiative for community dialogue, Jack felt pride resonate within him. The gatherings had grown. They attracted diverse members of the town, all aspiring for transformation. The promise of something special hung in the air, a dawning awareness that discomfort could cultivate growth. The once insurmountable wall separating him from the community now seemed like a bridge he'd helped construct, a testament to the inner work they had all committed to together. Jack's heart swelled as he observed faces illuminated with hope and acceptance, a rich tapestry of growth unfolding. Jack had taken a step beyond mere participation. He had become a conduit for change, his once narrow view broadening into an expanse of empathy and understanding. He had learned the power of courage and vulnerability, proving that those qualities could forge pathways to real transform. Today, Jack Tompkins stood strong, not just for himself, but for Taya, for his neighbors, and for the newfound community that echoed love in place of fear. It was a testament to their legacy evolving, a profound recognition that the true measure of strength lies not just in personal achievements, but in how one uplifts and creates space for others. This was his manifestation of success, a goal not just realized, but exceeded. Jack had not only transformed himself, but had helped co-create a future worth sharing. Now it is absolutely vital that you subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.